Vermont, a land of rolling green mountains and dense forests, hides secrets far older than its picturesque villages. Beneath the serene landscape lie enigmatic stone structures, cryptic carvings, and archaeological oddities that defy conventional history. From the mysterious stone chambers dotting the hillsides to the puzzling petroglyphs along riverbanks, these relics whisper of a past untethered to textbooks. Who built these formations, and why? Were they the work of indigenous peoples, pre-Columbian voyagers, or a forgotten culture lost to time? Nestled in the woods of South Woodstock, Vermont, lie mysterious stone chambers, barrel-vaulted structures built without mortar, their walls meticulously stacked with flat stones. These formations, often partially buried in hillsides, resemble ancient European souterrains, or even prehistoric tombs. Yet, their origins remain hotly debated. Some archaeologists argue they are colonial-era root cellars, pointing to similar structures found on 18th century farms. However, the chamber's precise alignments with solstice sunrises and other celestial events suggest a far more sophisticated purpose. One chamber, known as the calendar chamber, allows sunlight to penetrate its interior only during the winter solstice, casting a beam onto a specific backstone. This phenomenon hints at intentional design, raising questions about who possessed such astronomical knowledge. Indigenous Abenaki oral traditions mention sacred stone spaces, but no direct link to these chambers has been proven. Meanwhile, fringe theorists propose connections to Celtic or Norse explorers, though no artifacts support these claims. The chamber's construction techniques, featuring corbelled roofs and narrow passageways, add to their mystique. Were they ceremonial sites, storage spaces, or something else entirely? With no written records or definitive dating, these silent sentinels of stone continue to guard their secrets. The striking resemblance between Vermont's stone chambers and Irish souterrains has led some researchers to propose a transatlantic Celtic connection. Supporters of this theory point to the chamber's corbelled roofs, which mirror those found in Neolithic structures like Newgrange. Could Bronze Age explorers have crossed the Atlantic and left their mark in Vermont? Proponents cite the controversial Newport Tower in Rhode Island and the Mystery Hill site in New Hampshire as potential evidence of pre-Columbian European contact. However, mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical, noting the absence of Celtic artifacts, tools, or DNA evidence in the region. Critics argue that the chamber's design could easily be replicated by 18th century settlers familiar with European masonry techniques. Additionally, radiocarbon dating of organic materials found near some chambers places them squarely in the colonial period. Yet, the solstice alignments remain difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Could these chambers be the work of later settlers inspired by older traditions? Or do they represent a genuine archaeological enigma? The debate rages on, with some calling for advanced LiDAR surveys to uncover hidden patterns in the landscape. Until then, the Celtic theory remains a tantalizing but unproven possibility, adding to the chamber's aura of mystery. The role of Vermont's indigenous Abenaki people in the stone chamber's construction is another unresolved puzzle. While the Abenaki have a rich tradition of stonework, including ceremonial cairns and hunting blinds, no direct oral or archaeological evidence ties them to the chambers. Some tribal historians suggest the structures may have been repurposed by the Abenaki, who recognize their spiritual significance. Others argue that the chamber's design is too dissimilar from known indigenous architecture in the region. The absence of artifacts, such as pottery, tools, or ritual objects, inside the chambers further complicates the picture. Meanwhile, alternative researchers propose that the chambers were built by a lost culture, perhaps one that predated the Abenaki. This theory is bolstered by the discovery of similar stone structures across New England, some of which show signs of extreme age. However, without conclusive dating or cultural context, the chamber's origins remain speculative. Recent collaborations between archaeologists and Abenaki knowledge keepers have shed light on the chamber's potential ceremonial use, but the question of who built them lingers. Whether indigenous, colonial, or something else entirely, these structures challenge our understanding of Vermont's ancient past. One of the most compelling theories about Vermont's stone chambers is that they functioned as ancient calendars or astronomical observatories. The calendar chamber in South Woodstock is a prime example. Its entrance aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise, allowing sunlight to penetrate the passage and illuminate the back wall. Similar alignments have been documented at other chambers, suggesting a deliberate connection to celestial events. Researchers speculate that these structures could have been used to mark seasonal changes, vital for agricultural or ritual purposes. Comparisons have been drawn to European megalithic sites like Stonehenge, though on a smaller scale. Skeptics argue that the alignments could be accidental, given the chamber's limited number and the natural topography of the region. However, the precision of some alignments makes this unlikely. If intentional, the chamber's astronomical features imply a sophisticated understanding of the solar cycle, raising questions about the knowledge of their builders. Were they indigenous sky watchers, European settlers with esoteric traditions, or members of a forgotten culture? The lack of written records leaves the calendar hypothesis in the realm of tantalizing speculation, but the chamber's silent stones continue to hint at a deeper, older purpose. As Vermont's stone chambers gain attention, their preservation has become a pressing issue. Many chambers are on private land, leaving them vulnerable to vandalism, development, or neglect. In recent years, archaeologists and local historians have lobbied for protective measures, including documentation with 3D scanning and LiDAR mapping. Some chambers have been listed on the National Register of Historic Places, but enforcement remains spotty. The debate over their origins further complicates preservation efforts. If the chambers are deemed colonial root cellars, they may not qualify for the same protections as indigenous or prehistoric sites. Meanwhile, amateur explorers and New Age enthusiasts often visit the chambers, sometimes leaving offerings or altering the structures unintentionally. Collaborative efforts between researchers, landowners, and Abenaki representatives aim to strike a balance between access and preservation. Public education campaigns highlight the chamber's cultural and historical significance, urging visitors to tread lightly. The fragility of these structures underscores the urgency of unraveling their secrets before they are lost to time. Whether as archaeological wonders or spiritual landmarks, Vermont's stone chambers are irreplaceable windows into the past, and their survival depends on the actions of the present. Standing inside one of Vermont's stone chambers, the air is cool and still. The only sound the rustle of leaves outside. The weight of centuries presses down, and the unanswered questions seem to echo off the walls. Were these structures built by indigenous peoples, European settlers, or an unknown group? Did they serve as calendars, ceremonial spaces, or something more mundane? The lack of definitive answers only deepens their mystique. Some visitors report a palpable energy within the chambers, a sense of connection to the past that defies explanation. Others see them as mere curiosities, their origins destined to remain speculative. Yet, the chambers endure, their silent stones resisting the march of time. They challenge our assumptions about Vermont's history, reminding us that the past is far more complex than we often imagine. As research continues, new technologies may one day reveal their secrets. Until then, the chambers remain enigmatic sentinels, guarding stories that may never be fully told. Their mystery is their power, inviting us to wonder, explore, and question the narratives we take for granted. In the shadow of Vermont's Green Mountains lies the Bennington Triangle, a region infamous for its unexplained disappearances. Since the 1940s, at least 5 people have vanished without a trace within this eerie zone, which stretches from Glastonbury Mountain to the surrounding forests. The first recorded case was the disappearance of Midi Rivers, a 74-year-old hunter who vanished in 1945 while leading a group through the woods. Despite extensive searches, no sign of him was ever found. 3 years later, 18-year-old Paula Weldon vanished while hiking the long trail. Hundreds of volunteers scoured the area, but her fate remains unknown. Then in 1950, James Tedford, a veteran, disappeared from a moving bus. Witnesses saw him on board, but when the bus reached its destination, he was gone. Theories abound, from supernatural forces to geological anomalies, yet no single explanation fits all the cases. The Bennington Triangle has since become a magnet for paranormal investigators, drawn by its reputation as Vermont's own Bermuda Triangle. Whether the work of human malice, natural hazards, or something more mysterious, the disappearances continue to haunt the region, leaving behind only questions and unease. The Bennington Triangle's rugged terrain and unpredictable weather have led some researchers to propose natural explanations for the disappearances. The area is riddled with sinkholes, caves, and sudden drop-offs, which could easily swallow an unwary hiker. Additionally, the region's dense foliage and frequent fog create disorienting conditions, making it easy to lose one's way. Some speculate that magnetic anomalies, similar to those reported in the Bermuda Triangle, could interfere with compasses and other navigation tools. However, skeptics point out that these factors don't account for all the vanishings, particularly Tedford's disappearance from the bus. Others suggest that wildlife, such as black bears or cougars, could be responsible, though no remains or evidence of attacks have ever been found. The lack of physical clues has fueled speculation about more exotic causes, from interdimensional portals to government experiments. While geological and environmental factors likely play a role, they fail to fully explain the Bennington Triangle's enduring mystery. The land itself seems to resist scrutiny, its secrets buried as deep as its ancient bedrock. Long before the disappearances began, the Abenaki people regarded Glastonbury Mountain as a place of danger and spiritual significance. According to tribal lore, the mountain was home to Pomola, a malevolent spirit that kidnapped those who ventured too far into its domain. Other stories speak of a cursed burial ground or a portal to another world. Some researchers believe these legends may encode real hazards, such as treacherous terrain or toxic gases seeping from the earth. The Abenaki also warned of stone giants, supernatural beings said to inhabit the mountains, which could explain the eerie feeling many visitors report. While modern science dismisses such tales as folklore, the consistency of these warnings is striking. Could the Abenaki have known something about the land that we've forgotten? The disappearances seem to cluster in areas with deep indigenous history, suggesting a possible connection. Today, some hikers leave offerings or prayers before entering the Bennington Triangle, a nod to the land's ancient reputation. Whether myth or memory, the Abenaki stories add another layer to the mystery, reminding us that some places defy rational explanation. The abandoned town of Glastonbury, once a thriving logging community, is at the heart of the Bennington Triangle's enigma. By the early 20th century, the town had been deserted, its buildings reclaimed by the forest. Locals whisper that the land is cursed, citing a history of strange occurrences, from unexplained lights to phantom voices. Some attribute the curse to a violent past, including unmarked graves of loggers or indigenous conflicts. Others believe the land itself is inherently hostile, a notion reinforced by the disappearances. In 1946, a young boy named Paul Jepson vanished, while his mother tended to their truck. Despite a massive search, he was never found. The sheer number of vanishings in such a small area defies statistical probability, leading some to suspect foul play. Yet, no evidence of crime has ever surfaced. The Glastonbury curse has become a staple of local folklore, a cautionary tale for those who dare to explore the area. Whether supernatural or simply the result of natural dangers, the curse's legacy endures, casting a long shadow over the Bennington Triangle. In recent years, the Bennington Triangle has attracted paranormal investigators, cryptozoologists, and even mainstream scientists eager to solve its mysteries. High-tech equipment, including thermal cameras and electromagnetic field detectors, has been deployed to search for anomalies. Some teams report strange readings, fluctuating EMF levels, unexplained sounds, but nothing conclusive. Skeptics argue that the disappearances can be attributed to human error or wildlife, though the lack of remains remains troubling. One theory posits that the area's unique geology could produce infrasound, frequencies below human hearing, that induce disorientation or panic. Others suggest that the triangle's reputation has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, attracting reckless adventurers who then fall victim to the land's natural hazards. Despite decades of scrutiny, the Bennington Triangle refuses to yield its secrets. The disappearances continue to be a source of fascination, inspiring books, documentaries, and even a proposed memorial for the missing. For now, the triangle remains an enigma, a reminder that some mysteries resist explanation. The Bennington Triangle's enduring mystery lies not just in the disappearances, but in the way the land seems to defy understanding. Hikers report sudden temperature drops, unaccountable silences, and a pervasive sense of being watched. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures or heard whispers in the wind, though no source is ever found. The area's eerie reputation has made it a magnet for those seeking the supernatural, yet it remains deeply unsettling to locals. For the families of the missing, the triangle is a place of unresolved grief, its secrets a painful reminder of loss. Scientists continue to study the region, hoping to uncover clues, but the land guards its mysteries fiercely. Whether the work of natural forces, human malice, or something beyond our comprehension, the Bennington Triangle stands as a testament to the unknown. It challenges our certainty, forcing us to confront the limits of our knowledge. In a world where so much is explained, the triangle remains a shadowy exception, a place where people vanish without a trace, and the land keeps its silence. Along the banks of Vermont's West River lie petroglyphs carved into large weathered boulders. These mysterious engravings, depicting abstract shapes, spirals, and what appear to be human and animal figures, have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Some scholars believe they were made by the Abenaki, serving as spiritual markers or territorial signs. Others suggest they could be remnants of an even older culture, predating known indigenous settlements in the region. The precise dating of the carvings remains elusive, as stone offers no organic material for radiocarbon analysis. Local legends speak of these symbols as messages left by the first people, warning of seasonal changes or supernatural dangers tied to the river. The petroglyphs' location near a natural ford hints they may have served as navigational aids or ceremonial meeting points. Yet, their true meaning is locked within patterns that defy modern interpretation. The West River flows on, its waters brushing against these silent storytellers, eroding their edges but never erasing their mystery. Visitors who come upon them often speak of a strange feeling, an awareness of standing in a place where countless generations have paused, read the stones, and wondered the same questions we still ask today. Attempts to interpret the West River petroglyphs have produced an array of theories, each as fascinating as it is unproven. Some researchers compare the motifs to rock art found across northeastern North America, suggesting a shared symbolic language among ancient peoples. Others note similarities to carvings in Europe and Asia, fueling speculation about prehistoric transoceanic contact. Amateur historians have even claimed that certain symbols resemble astronomical charts, with lines and dots corresponding to star constellations visible thousands of years ago. However, without a cultural key, such interpretations remain speculative at best. The petroglyphs' survival through centuries of flooding and ice scouring is remarkable, yet their exposure to the elements also accelerates their deterioration. Preservationists have called for protective measures, but the challenge lies in safeguarding them without removing them from their original riverside context. The river's seasonal rise and fall continues to conceal and reveal the carvings, almost as if the water itself chooses when to share their secrets. Every new visitor hopes to be the one to finally unlock their code, but for now the stones keep their language to themselves. They remain as they have always been, enigmatic signposts from a past we can only partially glimpse. Among the Abenaki, the West River holds deep cultural significance, and some tribal elders view the petroglyphs as sacred. Oral traditions speak of marks of the ancestors, created to honor spirits dwelling in the water and to signal safe crossing points. Certain symbols, they say, are warnings of times when the river's current grows treacherous, signs only those who know the old stories can interpret. The Abenaki emphasize that these carvings are not mere art, but part of a living cultural landscape tied to ceremony and seasonal cycles. They caution against treating them as curiosities to be collected or relocated, insisting that their meaning comes from their connection to the land and water. Archaeologists working with Abenaki representatives have begun documenting the petroglyphs in detail, using 3D scanning to preserve their form digitally while respecting cultural sensitivities. Yet, even within the community, the exact meaning of some symbols has been lost to time. This partial forgetting lends the carvings an added air of mystery, signs meant to be understood by those long gone now challenging modern viewers to see beyond literal shapes and into a worldview where stone, river, and spirit are inseparably bound. Some independent researchers propose that the West River petroglyphs were part of an ancient system for tracking celestial events. They point to recurring motifs, circles, crescents, and radiating lines that could represent the sun, moon, and important stars. When plotted against the horizon, certain alignments appear to coincide with solstices and equinoxes, potentially marking planting and harvesting times. This theory aligns with broader patterns seen at other rock art sites across the continent, where astronomical knowledge was embedded into cultural practice. Critics caution against reading too much into visual similarities, arguing that without direct evidence, such connections remain circumstantial. Nonetheless, the astronomical hypothesis continues to attract attention, especially given the possibility that ancient peoples in Vermont possessed sophisticated sky-watching traditions. If true, these carvings would not only be art but also functional tools, stone calendars set against the backdrop of the river and surrounding hills. The thought that these weathered symbols once helped guide survival through changing seasons adds a practical dimension to their beauty. Whether or not this was their intended purpose, the idea reinforces how deeply intertwined the natural world and human ingenuity have always been. Like many ancient sites, the West River petroglyphs face a constant battle against erosion, vandalism, and neglect. Seasonal floods scour the boulders, gradually wearing away their shallow engravings. Visitors, unaware of the fragility of the carvings, sometimes step directly on them or trace their lines with fingers, unintentionally hastening their disappearance. In recent years, graffiti and chisel marks have further damaged some stones, prompting calls for greater protection. Local historical societies and tribal representatives have pushed for official recognition of the site's significance, hoping to secure funding for preservation and public education. There is debate over whether the petroglyphs should be covered during high water seasons or left exposed as they have been for centuries. The challenge lies in balancing accessibility with protection, ensuring that people can witness the carvings without putting them at greater risk. As the designs fade, the urgency to record and study them grows. These stones, after all, may outlast our own monuments, provided we care for them with the same reverence their creators likely intended. The question remains whether future generations will see them as we do now, or only as faint ghosts of a story nearly erased. Standing before the West River petroglyphs, one feels the press of time in ways that are difficult to articulate. The river flows steadily, as it has for millennia. While the carvings endure in their patient vigil, they have witnessed countless seasons, migrations, and human dramas, their meaning shifting as cultures rise and fall. For some, they are simply an archaeological curiosity. For others, they are sacred relics, linking the present to a mythic past. Every groove and line seems deliberate, yet the absence of explanation invites an endless loop of speculation. Did their creators ever imagine that, thousands of years later, strangers would stand here, puzzling over their intent. The petroglyphs offer no answers, only the reminder that not all human communication is meant for everyone to understand. In this way, they remain what they have always been, messages cast into the stream of time, carried forward by stone and water, waiting for the right eyes and minds to see them clearly. Until that day, they will remain as they are now, silent witnesses, guardians of knowledge, both intimate and unreachable. Off the shores of Lake Champlain, divers have reported an unusual underwater rock formation, stretching in a sinuous curve along the lake bed, nicknamed the Stone Serpent. It consists of boulders carefully placed end to end, forming a shape reminiscent of a coiled snake. The scale of the structure is impressive, over 200 feet long, yet its depth keeps it hidden from casual swimmers and boaters. First documented by local divers in the 1980s, the formation sparked debate almost immediately. Was it a natural deposit left by retreating glaciers, or the deliberate work of ancient hands? Its uniformity and curvature suggest intent, but the difficulty of construction in such an environment raises further questions. If built intentionally, it would have required significant effort, possibly by a culture with ceremonial or symbolic motivations. Some speculate that it may have been created when the lake's water levels were lower, later becoming submerged as the shoreline shifted over centuries. Without clear evidence of its age or purpose, the Stone Serpent remains one of Lake Champlain's most intriguing submerged enigmas, visible only to those willing to brave the cold, dark waters in search of something both geological and possibly cultural in origin. Serpent motifs appear in numerous Native American traditions, including those of the Abenaki and Mohican peoples, both of whom inhabited the Lake Champlain region. These cultures often depicted water serpents as guardians of sacred places, or as dangerous spirits to be respected and feared. In some stories, such beings could control storms or sink boats, and offerings were made to appease them. The resemblance of the submerged formation to a massive serpent has led some researchers to suggest it could be a symbolic construction honoring such myths. The placement of the boulders may have aligned with certain underwater features or seasonal events known to the builders. However, because the structure lies beneath water, it's impossible to directly compare it to similar land-based stone serpent effigies, such as the famous Serpent Mound in Ohio. The challenge of creating such a formation underwater, or even moving the stones to that location before submersion, only deepens the mystery. If linked to indigenous spiritual traditions, the stone serpent could represent a rare example of monumental art created in a lacustrine setting, intended to remain hidden, except to those who knew its exact location. Geologists who have examined photographs and sonar scans of the stone serpent point out that glacial activity can produce linear or curving ridges of boulders, known as moraines, which might coincidentally resemble deliberate constructions. The lake's history of glaciation and fluctuating water levels could account for the formation's placement and shape. Yet, skeptics of the natural origin theory note that the stones appear more evenly spaced and similarly sized than random glacial deposits typically are. Some divers claim the rocks show signs of being deliberately shifted or stacked, though such impressions are difficult to verify without detailed underwater excavation. The debate between natural and artificial origins echoes similar controversies over other ambiguous stone structures worldwide, where the line between geology and archaeology blurs. Without physical artifacts or other cultural markers nearby, the stone serpent remains in an interpretive limbo, potentially one of Vermont's most ancient monuments, or merely a compelling accident of nature. Investigating the stone serpent poses significant logistical hurdles. Lake Champlain's murky depths limit visibility, and strong currents can make prolonged examination dangerous. Sediment buildup over centuries obscures the finer details of the formation, while seasonal changes in water temperature restrict the diving window. Remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, have been used to gather high-resolution imagery, but funding for such projects is limited, especially for sites not officially recognized as cultural heritage landmarks. Underwater excavation would require permits and conservation measures to protect both divers and the site itself. Some researchers advocate for non-invasive scanning methods like multi-beam sonar and photogrammetry to create a precise 3D model of the structure, which could then be studied without disturbing it. The absence of sustained funding has kept these efforts sporadic, and without consistent monitoring, the formation's condition remains largely undocumented. Until more resources are dedicated, the stone serpent will remain one of Vermont's most difficult archaeological puzzles to fully explore or interpret. If the stone serpent is indeed human-made, its construction could date back thousands of years, possibly to a time when lower water levels exposed the lakebed as dry land. Geological studies suggest that during certain prehistoric periods, parts of Lake Champlain's shoreline extended far beyond its current boundaries, creating marshlands and shallow inlets. These areas would have been accessible to early hunter-gatherer communities, who might have built stone effigies as part of ritual practices. Similar serpent effigies in other regions have been linked to fertility rites, seasonal calendars, or territorial markers. The lack of associated artifacts makes dating the Champlain structure difficult, but its form could place it within a tradition of symbolic earth and stonework seen across North America. If confirmed, it would be among the few known examples in the Northeast, dramatically expanding our understanding of prehistoric ceremonial architecture in the region. Such a discovery would suggest that Vermont's ancient inhabitants participated in a broader cultural network that shared symbolic motifs and monumental construction techniques. Today, the stone serpent lies undisturbed in the dark waters, its true nature hidden as effectively as when it was first discovered. Few have seen it with their own eyes, and even fewer have studied it in depth. Whether a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering, a spiritual monument, or a geological quirk, its mystery persists. The lake itself seems complicit, guarding the formation beneath its surface, revealing it only to those determined enough to seek it out. For locals and divers alike, the serpent has become a quiet legend, a reminder that Vermont's history is not confined to what lies on land. The idea that something so large and deliberate-looking can exist just out of sight stirs the imagination, hinting at forgotten chapters of human or natural history. Until someone gathers irrefutable evidence, the stone serpent will remain in a state of suspended speculation, a sleeping guardian in the depths, coiled in stone and shadow. Deep within the Groton State Forest, hikers occasionally stumble upon weathered boulders, bearing crude but hauntingly expressive faces. These carvings, etched into granite and schist outcrops, vary in size from palm-sized visages to figures larger than a human head. The features are stylized: wide eyes, pronounced brows, and downturned mouths, giving them an almost mournful appearance. Many are partly hidden by moss or lichen, blending into the natural stone, as if deliberately meant to be discovered only by chance. Local historians first documented them in the early 20th century, but no definitive explanation has emerged. Were these the work of Indigenous artists, colonial settlers, or someone else entirely? Without inscriptions or accompanying symbols, dating them is difficult, and their remote locations suggest they were not made for public display. Instead, they may have served as private markers, spiritual guardians, or perhaps warnings to those entering sacred or restricted areas. The fact that several faces seem to gaze towards specific landscape features, streams, clearings, or mountain ridges, has only deepened the mystery. Some archaeologists suggest the Groton stone faces could be linked to indigenous traditions, particularly those involving animism, the belief that natural objects possess a spirit. Carving a face into stone might have been a way to honor or invoke the spirit of a particular location. In some Algonquian traditions, rock faces were considered living entities, capable of protecting travelers or warning them of danger. If these carvings were indeed indigenous in origin, they may have been part of a broader network of sacred sites, connected by oral tradition. Unfortunately, Centuries of weathering have softened the details, making stylistic comparisons to confirmed indigenous rock art challenging. Additionally, the lack of pigment traces or associated tools has hampered archaeological efforts to confirm such origins. Tribal historians have expressed interest in the faces, noting that even without proof, their placement in remote, untouched forest areas suggests a purpose beyond mere decoration. Another theory holds that the Groton stone faces were carved by early European settlers, perhaps as a form of folk art or trail marking. In the 18th and 19th centuries, rural communities often left idiosyncratic marks on the land, faces, initials, or symbolic shapes, either for navigation or as expressions of personal belief. In some cases, these carvings had protective purposes, akin to witch marks found on old barns to ward off evil. The Groton carvings could represent a similar tradition, adapted to the wilderness setting. Supporters of this theory point to the blockier, less refined carving style, which could have been done with iron chisels available to settlers. However, without documentary references or other artifacts to tie the faces to specific individuals or communities, the theory remains circumstantial. Still, the idea that these faces may have been silent sentinels for travelers crossing the rugged Vermont landscape is a compelling possibility. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Groton stone faces is their distribution. Explorers mapping the locations have noted that they often occur in clusters near water sources or on ridges with wide views of the surrounding land. Some appear to be aligned along old footpaths, possibly predating colonial roads, suggesting that they may have served as waypoints or warnings for travelers. A few seem to be oriented towards significant celestial events, facing the sunrise on the summer solstice or pointing toward prominent constellations. While such alignments could be coincidental, the repetition of certain positioning hints at deliberate placement. If the faces were part of a navigational or ceremonial network, they could connect Groton State Forest to a larger regional system of symbolic landmarks, potentially linking them to Vermont's other enigmatic sites. As word of the Groton stone faces spreads, concerns about their preservation grow. The softening of their features due to erosion is inevitable, but human interference accelerates the process. Vandalism, graffiti, and even well-meaning but damaging cleaning attempts have compromised some carvings. Conservationists advocate for detailed 3D scanning and photographic documentation to preserve their likeness digitally before they deteriorate further. However, keeping their exact location secret is a priority to prevent increased foot traffic and potential harm. There's also a cultural dimension. If the carvings are tied to Indigenous heritage, there's an ethical responsibility to involve tribal representatives in decisions about access and preservation. Until their origins are understood, these silent stone faces will continue to gaze out from the forest, their purpose as elusive as the hands that shaped them. Standing before one of the Groton stone faces, it's easy to feel the weight of time pressing in. The forest is quiet save for the wind, and the carved eyes seem to hold a story they'll never fully reveal. Whether guardians, markers, or mere expressions of artistry, they have outlasted generations, surviving storms, fires, and the slow creep of moss and lichen. Their ambiguity is part of their allure, forcing us to confront the possibility that not all human expressions were meant to be understood by everyone. They might have been messages for a select few, codes in a language now lost. Or perhaps they are simply art for art's sake, created in solitude with no audience in mind. Either way, they remain, hidden in plain sight, silent witnesses to centuries of change in Vermont's wilderness. Along the rugged shores of Lake Champlain, where waves lap against weathered stone, lie a series of faint but deliberate carvings. The petroglyphs depict geometric patterns, spirals and figures that seem part human, part animal. Some appear to be paddlers in long canoes. Others resemble creatures of the deep. The placement is deliberate, etched into bedrock just above the waterline, as if meant to be seen by travelers arriving by boat. First recorded by surveyors in the 19th century, Many of the carvings have since faded under centuries of lichen growth and wave erosion. Their survival suggests both skill in carving and a cultural importance strong enough to endure time's relentless wear. Whether made to record events, mark territory, or honor deities of the lake, they hint at a connection between people and water far older than modern settlement. Historians and archaeologists widely believe the Lake Champlain petroglyphs are of indigenous origin, most likely created by the Abenaki or their ancestors. The designs echo known Algonquian symbols representing spiritual beings, animal guides, and celestial phenomena. Canoe imagery could signify trade routes or seasonal migrations, while animal figures may represent totems linked to specific clans. Oral traditions tell of Udzi Hozo, the he who created himself, who shaped the landscape and waters. Some carvings, with their human-animal hybrids, could be depictions of such mythic beings. While no definitive dating has been established, stylistic comparisons suggest the petroglyphs may be several hundred years old or far older. The carvings serve as both artwork and historical record, preserving a worldview deeply rooted in the rhythms of nature. For the Abenaki, these stones remain sacred, part of a living heritage that connects past and present across generations. Some researchers interpret the petroglyphs not only as records of the past, but as messages meant for future generations. Certain carvings align with sunrise points at solstices or correspond to seasonal water levels, suggesting they may have served as environmental markers. Others depict fish in abundance or canoe travel, possible indications of fishing grounds or safe landing sites. The spiral motifs, recurring in several locations, are thought to symbolize cycles of seasons, life, and water movement. This cyclical perspective fits with Indigenous cosmology, in which time is not linear, but a repeating flow. If intended as guidance, these carvings may have warned of environmental changes, or preserved knowledge of migration and hunting routes for descendants. The endurance of these petroglyphs suggests that their creators were thinking far beyond their own lifetimes, embedding information in stone to survive centuries. While most experts favor indigenous origins, alternative theorists have proposed far more speculative explanations for the Lake Champlain petroglyphs. Some suggest that the carvings represent encounters with ancient voyagers from across the Atlantic, pointing to similarities between certain motifs and Bronze Age European rock art. Others see depictions of unknown creatures, possibly inspired by sightings of Champ, the lake's legendary serpent-like being. More fringe theories even link the petroglyphs to a prehistoric global seafaring culture, asserting that matching symbols have been found on distant continents. Critics of these ideas note the lack of physical evidence supporting such connections, but the mystery remains. Without direct dating or associated artifacts, the carvings invite interpretation, allowing them to straddle the line between archaeology and legend. The petroglyphs face increasing threats from erosion, vandalism, and development along the lakeshore. Rising water levels in recent decades have submerged some carvings for parts of the year, accelerating their decay. Conservationists advocate for high-resolution 3D scans and protective barriers, but limited funding has slowed these efforts. Indigenous communities emphasize that preservation must go hand in hand with respect, urging that the sites not be treated as mere tourist attractions. Unauthorized visitors have damaged several carvings by tracing them with chalk or carving initials nearby, acts that permanently scar the fragile stone surfaces. The urgency to act grows with each passing season, as storms and ice continue their slow but relentless assault. Protecting the petroglyphs means safeguarding not just an archaeological treasure, but a cultural link to the earliest chapters of human life along the lake. Standing at the edge of Lake Champlain, the water stretching to the horizon, the petroglyphs seem almost alive. Watching, remembering, the breeze carries the scent of fresh water, and the faint sound of waves, and the carved lines, though weathered, still hold their form. They are a conversation across time, etched in stone by hands long gone, but not forgotten. Whether as spiritual offerings, navigational guides, or ancestral records, these carvings speak to a profound relationship between people and place. Their survival is both fragile and miraculous, and their meaning may never be fully known. Yet they remain silent witnesses to centuries of change, guardians of a language that transcends words. In their presence, the boundary between past and present feels thin, as if the lake itself remembers. Beneath the cold, dark waters of Lake Memphremagog, divers have reported encountering what appear to be man-made stone formations. These structures, located in deep pockets of the lake, consist of large, flat slabs arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate placement. Some resemble crude walls. Others form low, rectangular enclosures. First noted by local fishermen who snagged nets on them, the ruins have since become a source of fascination and debate. Sonar scans reveal sharp angles unusual for natural rock formations, but no definitive proof of human construction has been found. Theories abound, from remnants of early indigenous fishing weirs to the remains of settlements, drowned by rising water levels thousands of years ago. With visibility often reduced to a few feet and icy temperatures year-round, exploration is slow and dangerous, leaving much of the site shrouded in literal and figurative darkness. The Abenaki people tell stories of a great flood that reshaped the land, swallowing entire villages beneath new lakes. Some elders speak of stone places under the water, where spirits still dwell, warning that they should not be disturbed. These legends mirror flood myths from cultures worldwide, hinting at memories of ancient climate shifts or glacial melt events. The supposed ruins of Lake Memphremagog fit neatly into these narratives, fueling speculation that they may be remnants of pre-contact settlements. Without artifacts or datable organic material, such claims remain unproven, but the convergence of oral tradition and underwater anomalies keeps the idea alive. For some, the site is not merely archaeological, it is sacred, a resting place best left untouched. The balance between scientific curiosity and cultural respect makes any exploration here both ethically and emotionally charged. Lake Memphremagog is also home to Memphrey, a legendary lake monster said to resemble a long-necked serpent. Sightings date back centuries, with early European settlers recording encounters eerily similar to Abenaki descriptions of a great water spirit. Some cryptozoologists suggest that the underwater ruins could be linked to the Memphrey legend, perhaps as ceremonial sites, where offerings were made to the creature. The placement of certain stone formations near deep drop-offs could indicate areas considered significant to local lore. While this theory stretches the boundaries of scientific plausibility, it underscores the cultural richness surrounding the lake. The intertwining of physical ruins and living myth transforms Lake Memphremagog from a mere body of water into a layered tapestry of history, mystery, and imagination. Skeptics argue that the ruins are nothing more than glacial deposits, the result of massive ice sheets grinding over bedrock during the last ice age. The weight and movement of the glaciers could have fractured stone into angular shapes, later arranged by shifting currents and ice flows. This process, known as jointing, can produce formations that mimic walls, steps, or enclosures. While plausible, this explanation struggles to account for certain symmetrical features observed by divers. If purely natural, the formations are still remarkable, rare examples of geomorphology that resemble human architecture. Yet, the possibility remains that they are a blend of both, natural features modified by human hands in a time now lost to history. In recent years, technological advances have brought new attention to Lake Memphremagog's submerged features. Remote-operated vehicles, ROVs equipped with high-definition cameras, have captured clearer images than divers ever could. Some footage shows sharp right angles and stacked slabs that continue to defy easy explanation. Archaeologists hope to recover small sediment samples from within the formations to test for traces of human activity. Charcoal, pottery fragments, or organic remains that could finally date the site. However, funding for such expeditions is scarce, and permissions from multiple jurisdictions complicate matters, as the lake straddles the US-Canada border. Each delay risks losing more to erosion, as waves and currents gradually wear the formations away. Standing on the shores of Lake Memphremagog, it is easy to imagine what might lie beneath the surface. The still water hides its secrets well, reflecting mountains and sky while concealing what could be the remnants of an ancient world. Whether the formations are natural wonders, indigenous engineering, or something older still, they remind us that history is not only written on land. Some of our most compelling stories may rest in silence beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment or the right eyes to reveal them. Until then, the underwater ruins remain a tantalizing question mark in Vermont's deep past, their answers buried in the cold and timeless dark. On a stretch of rock along the Connecticut River, in Bellows Falls, Vermont, are petroglyphs, whose origins remain an enigma. These weathered carvings depict human-like faces with almond-shaped eyes, long noses, and no mouths. Some are crowned with radiating lines, while others seem to float alone in the stone. The figures are carved just above the waterline, suggesting deliberate placement. Scholars have speculated that the petroglyphs were created by indigenous peoples centuries ago, perhaps as territorial markers, spiritual symbols, or records of significant events. Yet, their precise age is uncertain, with estimates ranging from several hundred to over 1,000 years old. The river's fluctuating levels over time make it difficult to determine the original carving conditions, adding another layer to the mystery. As the sun shifts, shadows highlight details invisible at first glance, making the figures seem almost alive. Attempts to decode the Bellows Falls petroglyphs have produced competing theories. Some researchers believe the radiating lines around certain heads represent the sun, linking the carvings to celestial observation or seasonal rituals. Others interpret the faces as depictions of spirits or ancestors watching over the river. A few anthropologists suggest the lack of mouths could symbolize silence or secrecy, perhaps indicating the figures were guardians of hidden knowledge. Indigenous oral traditions in the area contain references to sacred river sites, but none directly mention these carvings, leaving their meaning open to interpretation. Without written records or clear cultural links, the petroglyphs resist definitive explanation. The combination of artistry, mystery, and enduring presence makes them both a historical artifact and a living puzzle, inviting each generation to guess at their purpose. The Connecticut River itself may hold clues to the petroglyphs' origins. For thousands of years, it served as a vital transportation route for indigenous peoples, connecting villages, hunting grounds, and trade networks. The carving's location at a natural narrowing of the river suggests they may have been a signal to travelers, either a welcome, a warning, or a claim to the land. Seasonal flooding and ice flows over centuries have worn the rock, yet the carvings endure, their outlines softened but still visible. This persistence has led some to believe they were cut deep and with purpose, perhaps to ensure they survived long enough to pass on a message through time. The interplay between stone and water here feels deliberate, as if the river itself was part of the artwork's meaning. Early European settlers who encountered the petroglyphs often interpreted them through their own cultural lens, likening the faces to medieval sun icons or even biblical imagery. In the 19th century, some antiquarians speculated that the carvings were made by ancient Phoenician or Norse explorers, weaving the site into grand theories of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. While modern archaeology dismisses these ideas as unfounded, they highlight the allure these images have held for centuries. The petroglyphs became a source of local legend, inspiring tales of hidden treasures and lost civilizations. Even today, some fringe researchers point to their stylistic differences, from nearby indigenous carvings as evidence of a mysterious outside influence, though no material proof supports this claim. Exposure to the elements, fluctuating water levels, and human activity threaten the Bellows Falls petroglyphs. In recent decades, erosion has blurred some figures almost beyond recognition. Conservationists have pushed for protective measures, including barriers to prevent vandalism and digital documentation through 3D scanning. While these efforts have preserved the carving's shapes, the subtle textures and tool marks that might reveal more about their creation continue to fade. Local historians and Indigenous advocates stress the importance of treating the site with respect, not just as an artifact to be studied, but as a living link to Vermont's deeper past. Public awareness campaigns aim to balance accessibility with preservation, ensuring that the petroglyphs remain visible without being damaged by careless visitors. Standing before the Bellows Falls petroglyphs, it's hard to shake the feeling that the stone is watching you back. The faces, silent and expressionless, seem to hold a message just beyond our reach. Were they meant to communicate across time to people who would one day stand here wondering the same questions? Or were they part of rituals long forgotten, their purpose now dissolved into the river's flow? Whatever their origins, the carvings remain among Vermont's most haunting archaeological sites, a testament to human expression and the enduring pull of the unknown. They close our journey through Vermont's ancient mysteries as they began with questions unanswered, and the land still keeping its secrets. Vermont's past is written not only in books, but in stone, earth, and shadow. From the hidden chambers of South Woodstock to the silent faces at Bellows Falls, these places remind us that history is rarely a straight line. They hint at cultures whose names we may never know, and at knowledge lost long before we arrived. The Green Mountains hold stories deeper than any trail map, stories that have resisted centuries of questioning. Some will insist on practical explanations, others will cling to the mystical, but perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. What matters is that these mysteries endure, urging us to keep searching, to look closer, and to protect what remains. For every answer we find, another question rises from the stones. Vermont's ancient secrets are still out there, waiting, watching, and whispering to those willing to listen.